Hello, everyone. Today I have with me Dan Thomson. He is the founder of Sensei, an AI clone chatbot thing that's very interesting. Welcome, Dan.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Can you give us a quick introduction, a one-liner about what you currently do and what Sensei does?
Sure. Yeah, I'm the founder and CEO at Sensei, which creates some of the most hyper-realistic chatbots in the market right now. We build what we call a wisdom engine, which is the source of the hyper-personalization that we offer through collecting and capturing knowledge and data through your socials and your documents, files, websites, and making that useful as an output via chatbots on websites or Telegram, Discord, Twitter, email, pretty much everything. And that's what we've been building for the last couple of years.
That's pretty cool. So, what did you do before Sensei?
Yeah, my background's a bit of a mixed bag. I studied philosophy at university. I spent most of my sort of adult life working in and hospitality, which culminated in opening a chain of 23 restaurants and bars right up until the pandemic. At which time I went into Web3, so a bit more into tech. And I think I was in Web3 from a bit before the pandemic as well, probably about 3 years before, just as kind of like a hobby. But it gave me the opportunity to, get into it full time while, there wasn't much else going on. And so, I was in Web3 building out a few projects, specifically a Web3 DeFi insurance protocol. And then, but a few years before that, I actually written a couple of books around this concept of digital immortality and mind uploading and transferring our knowledge into AI versions of ourselves that can exist as us, as a way of passing on our knowledge, our experience, our wisdom to future generations. And so with the sort of explosion of AI about 3 years ago now, that at the time was probably 10 years ahead of what anyone thought it was going to be. I realized it was the opportunity to actually start building out something towards that and towards what I'd written about in the books. And that's what became Sensei.
When did you write those books?
Probably, I think it must have been around the time I moved to Spain. So about 2016 was the first one, and the second one a couple of years later.
So you were writing about digital immortality back in 2016. Am I right?
Yeah, because it tied in with what I studied at university, kind of, in a way. I focused on existentialism and the philosophy of identity. And so when it was around when I moved to Spain, and I was having a big, I guess, difficulty with kind of a dual life with the business and building a company, and then living in the South of Spain, which is a very, very relaxed place to live and not have to worry about too much. So it was a big disparity between working 15 hours a day in London to, working like 4 in the South of Spain. And so I started just questioning what's the point of it all? What's the meaning of life? Who are we in the universe, and why should we push ourselves to be motivated to work hard when there are places in the world that you can just go and live a very comfortable, easy life? And so, I wrote what that ended up becoming was this sort of exploration into the concept of digital immortality and mind uploading, into this idea of how we as a civilization went from being storytellers to losing a lot of that and losing the stories about different generations. We don't really know much about people two generations back, but not 3, not 4, unless they were particularly famous or successful, or your family keeps a lot of good records. So and that's quite sad to think that we would be forgotten after 2 generations. So what I realized is that we actually have this complete difference with previous generations, and that we have so much data about us. We have so many photos, videos, stories, messages that we've written, all this sort of culmination of everything that we are is in a digital format that, when combined with a sufficiently advanced AI, would be able to create a kind of a second you, something that could be interacted with, so that your great grandkids could ask you about a recipe, or ask you what you did day to day, or who your friends were and what your personality was like. And that's, really incredible that we are the first generation to actually have something like that available. At the time, what was in theory. Obviously, it had been an idea shared around by, some sci-fi films and TV shows like Altered Carbon and Upload and Black Mirror. But for me, it was an inevitability. It was a reality that we are going to have, that we will be able to interact with virtual humans and have a version of ourselves that can interact with people in the long term. So that's why I got really excited when I was thinking about it, and I really enjoyed writing about it. The first book was this more philosophical idea around, if we could do something like that, should we? And, how and what would that look like? And then the second book was more of if we could do that, let's say it were possible, what would you need to make that a reality? What would you need as a tool, and how would that be built as an AI to actually make that happen? which was kind of ended up becoming the roadmap and framework for what Sensei is working towards.
All right. That's what I wanted to ask. Like, how did you go from exploring the concept of digital immortality to actually starting to build something in this space? Like, right, you started by writing the books and then you got into software.
Yeah.
That's quite a big leap.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a non-technical founder. My very first call was to a very good friend of mine, Marco, who has become the CTO at Sensei ever since. And at the very early days, it was just discussions around, what that might look like and how we can start. And we started off very simply with I think a Gordon Ramsay chatbot on WhatsApp. And so we started very small, and it kind of grew and expanded, and we learned a lot, and and the team grew. And I was bootstrapping it myself at the time, so I was out there just exploring, like doing the research and talking to people and talking to customers and attending different events. And yeah, Marco brought in a couple of junior developers to help build out the basics of what Sensei was to become. And so yeah, it did require someone else coming in. But the thing is, now everything's different now. Like if someone's starting out now, they have this opportunity to just go and vibe code something, and actually just work with the AI to build things using Bolt or Lovable. And you can actually have a working demo and product up in a few minutes, let alone a few hours.
Yeah, I totally get that. Like I was playing around with Lovable and I was able to build like a really demo version of an AI lawyer, for example, in like 4 hours, I think. And I didn't know anything about coding, and it's crazy what you can build now. But you started a bit earlier than this boom. So I want to ask you, was there a turning point where you felt like things really started to click in this like AI space for you?
It's an interesting question. I don't think so. I think I've once I started working on this, I realized I don't really want to work on anything else, because it's a big dream. It's a big idea of creating virtual humans. And so for me, it wasn't really a case of something clicking into place, more than I kind of knew where the space is going and what's going to happen and where we're going to be as a civilization in the future. So for me, it's almost it's more the opposite way. There was a lot more barriers and a lot more difficulties than I was expecting. So it wasn't so much about the clicking in place, because obviously I'd written about it, and then the AI was at a level that was good enough to start with. And this was around, I guess, the start of 2023. So it wasn't really when it kind of clicked into place. I think there's been a lot of difficulties we've had along the way. When we did our sort of fundraising, which is we did a pre-seed round via a crypto token sale, which was a bit more interesting. It was great to get the finances to actually build a team and build the product properly. Whereas before it was a bit bootstrapped, a bit patchwork, with a limited budget, limited team. So that helps a lot, but it wasn't really kind of like a penny drop, a ball drop moment. It was really like everything clicking together. It was more, we are working towards that probably. And at some point, I think that click into place will probably happen, and we'll feel like, okay, this is good. We're at a sustainable level of business. We can grow, we can expand, and that kind of stuff. But no, we either haven't had it yet, or it was always there.
And what about the name? Does it happen to come from the Japanese sensei word?
Yeah, exactly. So when we first started out, we were actually looking at education. And so the idea of Sensei from that kind of Japanese concept of mastery and martial arts came along. But it wasn't until we really started looking into it that it became a much more powerful word for us, and it works across different verticals and different industries, because the actual translation isn't necessarily a master or some kind of like samurai or anything like that. The word Sensei, the direct translation is actually the one who came before. And so this is really nice about tying it in with the digital immortality. It ties it in with anything we want to do, education or knowledge transfer, or any kind of understanding of taking knowledge and wisdom and sharing it with a new generation. So it's a really, really good fit, but it wasn't necessarily around like some kind of like, samurai teacher thing. It was because the idea came out. It was a beautiful way of saying it, and it fit with education at the time, and it's been a really good fit for everything we've done since.
Yeah, I really dig the name. I think it's a really nice wordplay. Especially, I like the say part, like the second half of the name, because it kind of explains what the product does. It says things.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was really, it was nice. The brand agency did a really good job on that. So making the connection through to how it's actually like an interaction, a talking point, and you are talking to it and it's talking back to you. So the say part was a nice touch.
Yeah. So okay, so it's used in education. It's used or gonna be used towards the immortality, digital immortality space. But I want to know, who do you find out is the most drawn to what you do right now?
So right now we've got these incredible chatbots that are great for as sales tools for websites for businesses. So we've got a big focus on business products at the moment, and this is just to build a sustainable business and a grounding, and actually as a launch pad to grow. We've got a few different products in the works now that are bigger, more scalable, more exciting. But the chatbots are a great example of how well our wisdom engine and our API works. So the chatbots for a website, you can go onto pretty much any website and the chatbot experience is usually quite terrible. Sometimes it's okay, but usually quite bad. So with our one, what you can do is you can actually make it a hyper personalized chatbot, which could be, imagine going to the Apple website and have Steve Jobs chatbot, but a good personalized version of that to help with the sales, to help with the customer support and community, and have that as a tool for the business. And so that's what we do now, is basically have these hyper-personalized chatbots, which could be in the form of a CEO or a salesperson, or it could be in the form of a generic sort of brand ambassador. Think having like the George Clooney character that he plays when he's doing the Nespresso adverts. Imagine having that welcoming you and talking you through the different flavors and machines when you get to the Nespresso website. And it's that kind of personalization that makes it more interesting. It makes it more human. And we do like to say that we're putting the humanity back into the AI. So it's really nice that we're actually able to add those aspects, those personality traits, those character traits and flaws back into it, so that when you go to those chatbots, it's not just talking about the business and basic products and can I help you, can I help with this. You can actually ask it about the person behind it, about the team behind it, about the company, and it will adapt to the questions that you ask, instead of just saying, oh, I can't answer that. That's what's really nice. It actually feels like you're almost talking to a human again.
You know what would be one very interesting use case? Something I've heard lots of entrepreneurs talk about in the online space is they would like to replicate themselves for their teams to reduce their need for input with their employees. And they would like to do so by feeding maybe their Slack messages or whatever platform they use for communication and all the content they produce and SOPs and all that. Is that something you can do with Sensei, or something that you are looking to implement in the future?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the use cases for sure. So you can have a chatbot and you can make it as personal as you like, tie in Slack messages, tie in your documents, website scrapes, live interviews, so you can actually get to know you a bit better and understand you as a person, and then deploy that either to Telegram, Discord, to Slack, to actually have it there as a resource to interact with your team or even customers, clients. So, for me, for example, like my replica, my chatbot is actually used in a lot of different ways. I have it interacting with people on Twitter, it writes my emails, I have it in Slack, and I have it on Telegram. And this enables community management. It helps with sales. It's deployed to our website as well. So it helps with like customer inquiries. And it's used in a lot of different ways that actually does unblocks a lot of my time. If I get a journalist coming through and they want to interview me, I say, oh, why don't you try chatting my replica first, and then let me check the answers and I'll see if it's okay. And usually it's like 99% accurate. So there is a huge amount of weight day to day that can be offloaded onto an AI version of yourself.
Okay. And are there groups of people you'd love to connect with more in the future? People who are not aware of how they could benefit from this type of product?
Sure, for sure. We're actually exploring around this concept of knowledge transfer, and around that's the same kind of idea that we're just talking about with personal replicas and how you can extend yourself. We're looking at how we can better capture knowledge, and tacit knowledge specifically, in larger enterprises, specifically with enterprises that are facing a huge wave of the silver tsunami, the retirees, and how we can enable that knowledge to be captured and made useful to the team going forward from the people with like decades worth of experience who don't necessarily use the modern systems. They don't use the Slack or whatever else that we would use now day to day. And so a lot of that knowledge and a lot of their work is in their head. A lot of their understanding of different systems is still in their heads. So how do we get out of them, and how do we actually make that useful and available to the teams when they retire? So yeah, industries like oil, gas, manufacturing, shipping, even nuclear, like there's plenty of industries that have been around for a very long time with facing these a huge amount of retirees and just change over the next few years, especially with AI and robotics and automation. But that knowledge shouldn't just walk out the door with them.
Interesting. So we talked about industries that require, let's call it generational wisdom, and also like businesses that already have SOPs and established processes, and the CEO knows what to do. So what about startups? How do you see Sensei serving startups? Is that something that they should do?
Yeah, absolutely. So for startups, I mean, Sensei is great for, again, for those sales chatbots to help with help boosting your sales. The ROI is massive actually on just deploying a personalized chatbot to your website. You can see huge ROI in terms of additional leads and customers, or just for customer support. Save a huge amount of time on customer support agents by having these human-like AI agents that can interact and deal with the customer inquiries whenever they come up. So you're looking at a 30 times reduction in cost of the customer support agent. It can obviously escalate it to a person if it needs to, async or live, and having that as a customer support tool is incredible for especially small businesses and startups who have tighter budgets and should be looking at AI solutions instead of trying to hire people, which is a massive cost. And you've got not just the actual financial cost, but the cost of like the time it takes to recruit and train and everything else. Whereas that same training could easily be put into an AI and it will run 24/7 and handle thousands of simultaneous queries on the platform.
So from my personal knowledge and the people I interact with, I know that a considerable amount of people are skeptical towards one thing, especially when it comes to replacing their human sales reps with AI sales reps. They are afraid their conversion rates would go down and they would risk losing money on the leads they generate. So what's your take on that?
I think it sometimes depends on the industry and the business, obviously, and depends on how good the salespeople are. I think having a very well-trained sales bot as a chatbot or for a website or on a different community channel helps small businesses to have access to high-quality salespeople. But if a team's already got really great salespeople, sure, they might see a drop in conversion, but we don't necessarily see it as a dip. We see it as an extension of them. So in the sense that one person could handle one lead at a time, one customer call at a time, and AI can do thousands simultaneously. So sure, even though maybe the conversions per conversation might dip a little bit, but for the ability to use it to have thousands more conversations, I mean, you're only going to see an increase in terms of the possible leads that come through your door that you can then take on as a human if you think that's better, or deploy another AI agent to close the deals. So it's not what we've seen necessarily as a decrease. I'm sure there is a concern around that. And I think that just comes back to people not necessarily knowing what AI tools are out there, how to use them properly. A lot of people still, I think this is typical of any sort of technological development, but people are quite slow. They're quick to adopt, but slow to learn how to maximize the usage of it. So we, even at Sensei, we have like almost monthly training sessions on the best prompt exercises and how to actually get the most out of AI and what are the best AI tools out there. And I think that a lot of companies are still using LLMs and AI at a very basic level. You see them just treat it a bit like Google. They just do a quick Google search using an AI and that's it. Whereas there's whole other intricacies and levels that you can actually take with the AI to get higher quality results out of it. And so I think that the limitation really isn't on the fear isn't really on the actual AI not doing as well. It's actually because the people don't know how to leverage AI to actually extend themselves and be better versions of themselves. So I think that's probably an education aspect, but it's definitely the bigger problem we see.
All right. So how would you recommend somebody who runs a company and already has a sales team that's pretty successful, maybe not exceptional, but it's doing great? How could they start dipping their toes in automating their sales process with AI while minimizing the risk of lowering conversion rates?
So, I mean, education from the top down. I mean, we say this a lot, like enabling companies and individuals to just be better aware of like how to leverage AI better and how to learn how to prompt it better and how to train it better. But then, if they're coming to, let's say, using the Sensei chatbots as a tool, a lot of that comes down to adding the personality back in. People don't necessarily want to talk to chatbots, but if you can make it so they don't feel like they're talking to chatbots, you can really see good return. Then it comes into quick, the common sense things that you learn when you're doing sales, quick data capture, following up, and consistency. So I think when you can actually make the AI useful, whether you use Sensei or another platform, once you've actually trained it in that way, in the way that you want it to be, and actually knowing about the product intimately in the same way that you do, as a founder, as a salesperson, once it has that information, it becomes like a resource for you. Even if you don't use it directly with the customers, maybe you just have it there that you can quickly query yourself. We have my chatbot for our community on Telegram and Discord isn't the thing that's interacting with the community the most. I mean, it is on, I guess, a per message basis, but it's, the reason is because our community managers and moderators would, if they're not sure about something, they just ask my replica, because it's just available, it's there, and it has the up-to-date knowledge of what we're doing at Sensei. So it becomes this like sort of second self that you can rely on for different information and tools, and whether or not you pass it on directly onto the customer, the community, the client, or whether or not that's just a resource for your team is really up to you. And that's where it's, however, and this is what comes back to like how you use AI best for yourself. It's not a kind of a one-stop shop fits for everyone. It does require a bit of training to plug the gap and work with the existing team and fill the gaps of what they have and fill the skill sets that they need.
Okay, so as in any application of the AI, you first need to know how to use it. So it's something that a lot of people are still learning. Can you recommend some learning resources about how to properly use AI?
That's a great question. We do a lot of internal training sessions just from our own stuff. If someone's looking at it for the first time, I mean, the easiest one is YouTube, I'd guess. Or, I mean, the AI itself, it has a really good resource of the ability to, if it is something you want to learn about, it's literally just about talking to the AI and almost taking a step back. So when you're trying to learn about something, you wouldn't say to the ChatGPT or whatever, you wouldn't say, teach me about AI. It would, but it's not probably the best way to say it. You'd probably take a step back and say, I'm looking to learn about AI. Where should I start? How should I, what would be the best way to maximize my learning for using AI for sales, for customer support, for my own health? And I think asking the AI to take that step back and actually understand your position first will again get a better response out of it. And then going through the motions of talking to it, learning from it, and just daily interaction. And this is where, the younger kids coming through now are going to have such an advantage over an older generation, in that they'll be growing up with this. All of their resources will be, from interacting with AI. So they'll be, so akin to getting that knowledge, getting that resources, super quick from just chatting with AI, that, an older generation probably won't be able to keep up, because they'll still be limited by their own, usage of AI as a Google search engine, instead of actually like leveraging it for education and improvement and all these different tools and automations you can add in.
Amazing insights. So I'm curious, what's the most exciting opportunity you can see, like on the short-term horizon, maybe like a year or two, for Sensei?
For Sensei, yeah, so we're exploring this knowledge transfer concept for enterprises, especially around retirees and people leaving. I think there's a huge amount of knowledge loss in companies. So we're really exploring how we can fix that. I mean, knowledge loss in the US alone accounts for about a $2 trillion cost that no one really talks about. So we're looking at how we can capture 10, 20% of that knowledge that's lost and actually make it useful and available to these large companies, and how we can best do that using the chatbots, using our wisdom engine. So we're exploring that, and that's what's really exciting, because I think that there's a huge opportunity there that hasn't really been, tapped into. And I think that that's something we're, particularly excited about. We also, with our API on top of our wisdom engine, this enables lots of different people to actually build on top of what we have. So we have our wisdom engine that can process data, websites, documents, whatever, and turn it into a useful chatbot which can be deployed in a few different ways alongside some agentic functions. So in the next year or two, we expect to see, quite a lot more people from our hackathons, or from just, finding our API, building on top of it, and actually leveraging our technology for different industries. Because we've identified something like 50 different verticals and industries that our technology could be applied for, and we're only really tackling, a handful, like 2 or 3 of them ourselves. So we make it available to anyone else to build on top of those, build for those industries. You building on top of our technology and our API because we know that there are good opportunities and we want to help them because their success would be our success.
Amazing. Those sounds like quite some opportunities, and actually, I might be interested myself in learning more about building on top of your API. I think I can see a couple of use cases myself in my space that would be very useful. So I do have one last question for you. If you could wave a magic wand and make one thing easier while trying to grow Sensei, what would it be?
So we're a fully remote team, which is a challenge because we've got people who work for us from Vancouver all the way to Taiwan and pretty much everything in between. Most teams in Europe, and I'm in Mexico City, which means I'm about 8 hours behind the average sort of team member. For me, waving a magic wand would be having everyone in the same time zone in the same city to work together day to day. It's a bit of an impracticality given the nature of who we are, because the time zones, especially for me, it means I'm up and starting work at like 5 a.m. most days. Would be nice to start a little bit later. So magic wand for me would be having a team together because we've got a really, really strong team. They're fantastic, and every time we meet up, we have it's great to actually work together and we see how productive we can be when we're in the same room. So for me, the magic one would just be to see our team more.
Yeah, I can totally get that. I've been working on different time zones for, I don't know, almost 7 years now, and you kind of get used to it, but it's never fully comfortable because, yeah, you have to wake up or go to sleep at all these unnatural hours, let's say. So it can get tiring. So I totally get you. Is there anything else you would like to share with our viewers before we end this episode?
No, I mean, we always welcome people trying out what we do. It's free to start. You can send us feedback and feature requests. We also have our bug bounties available for anyone who's interested. And we have pretty much monthly points campaigns with huge cash prizes. And right now we have our massive hackathon going on in partnership with the NED Members Club in London, which is finishing in September. So if anyone wants to build out something on top of Sensei around networking, around membership, or around chatbots for e-commerce, get involved in the hackathon. I think there's a $10,000 prize up for grabs, and more than enough time to put a submission in and actually build towards it.
All right. So everyone, you can go check out Sensei. I linked their website in the description of this video. I want to thank you, Dan, for taking the time to record this. Those were some amazing insights, and thank you again. See you next time.
All right, bye.